What happens when a man with the power of a god descends into utter madness? Well, you get this. The year 68 AD is as famous as it is violent, and it's all thanks to Nero. Once a popular emperor with strong alliances, Nero's deep-cut popularity was eviscerated by the year 68. The patrician class and the Senate's elites had lost confidence in Nero's ability to rule, a sinking ship years in the making. They say optics are everything. Well, the public already blamed the young emperor for the infamous Fire of Rome incident in the year 64. While over half of Rome's infrastructure was damaged, some said that Nero fiddled while Rome burned, using the fire for political gain. Rome was never free of scandals like these. Politics are dirty, but the Senate needed Nero's cooperation in imperial affairs happening now. So when the Senate summoned the young emperor, no one could find him. He was off playing the lyre and participating in the theaters of Greece. Over the years, performing abroad and apparently getting away with murder had actually become a trend, and the otherwise preoccupied emperor left the Senate to pick up the political pieces. What's more, the Rome of Nero's time was enduring multiple geopolitical threats. The provinces of Britain and Armenia were nearly lost. Revolts in Judea and Jerusalem specifically were becoming increasingly violent, and it had just dawned on Nero that he ought to do something about it. So what does he do? He visits the infamous oracle at Delphi, a famous bastion of prophetic utterances in the ancient world, visited by many famous Greek heroes of old. When Nero consulted the oracle concerning the Roman Empire's well-being, he received a cryptic reply to his inquiry: "Only beware the year 73. This omen was interpreted as good fortune. The 30-year-old would have over 40 years more to rule. There is a problem, though, in nearly every story involving run-ins with the oracle at Delphi. A well-intended prophecy was often double-edged and ironic. Over 500 years earlier, the Lydian king Croesus famously went to war with Cyrus the Great over what was interpreted, for Croesus, as a victorious oracle. The oracle told Croesus if he went to war with Cyrus, a great army would be destroyed as a result. Instead, Croesus lost everything to the Persian king. Likewise, Nero's oracle did well to scatterbrain his strategic thinking as emperor. All he had to do was cruise until he turned 73 years old. For now, he aspired to become the world's greatest lyre player, performing for his subjects at home and abroad. He famously once forced a pregnant woman in distress to stay through his hours-long performance, forcing her to give birth in the theater. So if you were at one of those famous Nero parties, you'd best be looking like you're having a good time. But while Nero was launching his highly anticipated world tour, Rome's western front was bursting apart at the seams. Civil unrest and rebellion were breaking out in the province of Gaul, modern-day France. Gaul was governed by one Gaius Julius Vindex, a vocal critic of Nero's heavy taxation policies. He also openly hated Nero and advocated to have him deposed and replaced. Certainly a dangerous thing to openly state, but here's the thing. Half of the empire seemed to agree with Vindex's criticisms, and some started to support his cause. Suetonius says that upon hearing of Vindex mustering a rebellion in the west, Nero shrugged it off. He had the numbers on his side, he had the home field advantage, and most importantly, he had the oracle. For 8 days after receiving word of Vindex's open opposition, Nero sent no letters and issued no commands of retaliation. Instead, he sat aloof, or spent his days observing the athletes at play. Vindex turned up the heat and issued multiple written invitations to the Senate. Again, Nero paid no attention to these, but one thing Vindex said finally struck a chord with the emperor. He said that Nero was a terrible lyre player. We should probably make a brief mention of Nero's state of mind if it wasn't obvious yet that something was off. Studies that have analyzed the historical Nero have concluded that the emperor met virtually every condition consistent with a modern diagnosis of psychosis, a mental illness that twists discernment between reality and imagination. This could manifest itself in hallucinations, erratic behavior, and visions of grandeur, all of which Nero demonstrated over his 13-year reign, and much to the horror of everyone. I'll link that study in the description to this video. This could be why Nero committed matricide, fratricide, and even mariticide without feeling remorse. So by the year 68, everyone once close to Nero was either exiled, dead, or now seeking his destruction. This all was perfect timing for Vindex, as his uprising in Gaul garnered additional support rapidly. In just a few months, the resistance became a civil war-level conflict. Vindex had the best gains when he secured an alliance with Servius Sulpicius Galba, Nero's hand-picked governor of Hispania. Galba will be an important name to remember. He already had a legion of soldiers under his command, and was encouraged by Vindex to claim the empire for himself. Vindex had inevitably found Nero's replacement in Galba. So over the next few weeks, Galba, who was 73 years old, would procure additional legions from allies in North Africa and Lusitania. By April of 68 AD, Galba's forces already hailed him as their new emperor. Now, civil war was guaranteed. And how did Nero respond to this? Just how you would imagine. Suetonius says that Nero desired to turn over the Gallic provinces to his armies to ravage, to poison the entire Senate at banquets, to set fire to Rome, but to first let the wild beasts loose so that it would be harder for the people to flee. A bit later, to his credit, he apparently flipped his stance and reasoned to march to Gaul alone, to prostrate himself in front of Vindex and Galba's legions, winning them back simply with his tears and his lyre playing. He was certain he could reconcile everyone with song and dance. Ladies and gentlemen, diplomacy from the most powerful man on earth. And just like that, the Senate had had enough. The power dynamics began to change as rebellion moved towards Rome. Nero's forces would defeat Vindex at the Battle of Vesontio in May of 68, but this was not enough to stop the insurrection in motion elsewhere. The Senate had already colluded to throw their support behind Galba, who was rapidly expanding his military support in Hispania. And the same day the Senate threw in for Galba, they also declared Nero an enemy of the state, sentencing him to death if he was found. With no other options, the emperor turned enemy fled the city for his life, with just a handful of loyal servants. By his own doing, his list of allies and confidants had grown thin over time. Since he had executed them all. Taking up residence in a villa just outside of Rome, the outlawed emperor of only 30 years old took his life in June of 68 AD, and although Suetonius tells us that the streets were littered with praise and celebration at this news, this was no ordinary passing of an emperor. The real issue at hand was that Nero had no living successor. Here was the end of his famous dynastic line, the Julio-Claudians, an historic family rooted in the ambitions of Julius Caesar a century prior and cemented into rule by Octavian, better known to us today as Caesar Augustus. The Julio-Claudian dynasty that started mere decades before the advent of Christ had ended. Now everything, even the throne, was up for grabs. But one man's tragedy is another man's opportunity, and Galba was the man of the hour. With the Senate awaiting his arrival, Galba marched on Rome with his legions to harness glory, breaking the tradition of imperial succession for something new. In the words of Tacitus, a well-hidden secret had been revealed. It was now possible for an emperor to be chosen outside of Rome. With all eyes on the princeps, Nero's death and Galba's triumph kicked off the chaotic year of events known as the Year of Four Emperors, where everything was up for grabs and the trouble had only just begun.